I do worry for my mental health and well-being, which is why I have a new bottle of whiskey. But yeah, that's about it. I'm glad to be finally back. I love ranting. I feel like I was feeling very uncomfortable the past couple of weeks. I'm like, why is that? And I realized I really haven't gone for a rant. And this episode is kind of like a therapy session
You
for
got to
me.
be
So I'm
too
happy
PC
about
on the
that.
broadcast.
Yeah, I can't, right? I can't be the Tyloo. What the fuck are you doing? You fucking idiots. I can't say that. I got to be Tyloo. That you could have played that better.
Alrighty, Geographically Challenged, episode number 12. We're back again. We had a week off, and we've got the gang back together for what feels like the first time in quite a long time. Bleh wasn't here since the Urcast episode, and Pilsky obviously was here last time, but it has been a week off for us all, so got a fair bit to talk about. We'll be talking about PAL Summer 2020, which is obviously very close to Bleh's heart. We've got Dreamhack OCE qualifiers that have just happened. There's the ESEA season that's going on right now in Asia as well. We'll touch very briefly on that. And then there's a fair bit to sort of talk shit about. We've got a couple of audience questions as well. So let's dive straight into it. Although, before we do, I do want to give a quick shout out to a couple of things. I made a Patreon. You guys are probably going to laugh at me. But if anyone's so inclined, feel free to head over to that. I'll put a link in the description. And also, please feel free to tweet at Splashkey. He was supposed to be on this episode, but he's a little dog, and he decided he would rather play Counter-Strike with his team for some reason than join us on the show. So I don't really know what's going on there.
It's not like he's winning anything, so I don't get why he's not on the show.
Mm-hmm. And I did say that to him as well, pretty much. Either way, Bleh, it's been a little while since we've seen you. So what have you been up to? I know you've been casting a lot of stuff.
Yeah, mainly just covering the PAL 2020, the Asian RMR summer. It's been taxing on my mind. Some questionable games, some questionable results from some of the teams where, we've been talking about some of these teams that over the past couple of months on our episodes about how, oh, this team's good because of this team's bad because of this team should be beating this team. And it's all gone to shit, Jordan. Whatever we said was completely fucking wrong, and some of these teams are fucking garbage, and even the good ones want to be garbage, is what I've realized.
Well, we're going to talk all about that. Before we do, I want to give you a quick shout as well, Pilsky. You've been casting pretty much everything under the sun except for Counter-Strike, haven't you? So you've been a bit of a dog as well.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, if they don't hire you to cast a Counter-Strike, you got to go cast all the other games that you love, like the StarCrafts and the Valorant, all that kind of stuff. I have been keeping a little bit of an eye on some of these events, and there has been some pretty insane results, I have to say. So I'm keen to get into it.
All right, well, let's get into it then. We'll dive straight into the PAL Summer 2020 discussion now. I just want to know from you, Bleh, like, what's it even been like to cast this? Has it brought you back down to reality after we've been talking quite a lot about Asian Counter-Strike? I had a quick look on Wikipedia, or on Liquidpedia rather, before we started this episode, and I saw that there was like 50 Chinese casters, and then there's 4 English casters. So you guys have been pulling some pretty big days.
Yeah, it's been long days. I think 3 best of 3s every day for like 5 days in a row every week, 3 weeks of group stages. It's like what? 15 days of 3 best of 3s. It's 45 best of 3s. And when you have certain teams involved there, like Bren and Tyloo and Invictus, at one point, I'm just like, I don't know when I'm going to crack, but at one point I'm going to crack. It's not because of the number of the games. It's because of the number of games of these particular configuration of teams in one tournament. It's some wild CS that I've witnessed. And this is coming from someone who's been in the Asian scene for over like 6 years. It's been a sobering experience.
Yeah, I saw a tweet from, I think it was from Mitchman, about when you guys were casting Beyond and Lucid, and I was like, I literally was thinking like, this is exactly what I'm talking about on Geographically Challenged, where we just have to cast the same teams playing the same games on the same maps over and over and over again, and they never seem to change. So let's talk a little bit about this format first, right? Before we get into the results and what's been going on, and our expectations have more or less been subverted by the Asian scene. Pilsky, I want to get your thoughts on it. It's a round robin. I know we sort of discussed this briefly amongst ourselves, but it seems a little strange that a tournament's going to go for this long, and a lot of the matches, like on paper, they don't really matter, right? We're into what would now be the final week by the time this episode airs. The matches are in their final week before playoffs, and as Bleh said, there's like 45 matches or something like that over the course of the 3 weeks. So do you really need 45 matches to decide who goes through to a top 8 bracket in a 10-team tournament?
No. you can't maintain any quality of matches. You can't maintain any quality of casting with this much volume of matches. I don't think there's any real reason for it. Like maybe if this was a league that goes over like a couple of months or something like that, that's what you would go for. If you're doing some like sick league where it's on LAN and stuff and you want all the best teams in the world to play each other. But I don't really see the reasoning behind this kind of a tournament. And like to be fair, like I'm the kind of person that usually advocates for teams having as many chances as possible to prove themselves and not just getting, like the old days we play a 1-day qualifier and you get a best of one against whoever, and if they upset you, then your 3 months of work mean fuck all and you can get out. But this is too much. This is too much the other way.
Okay, Blair. Then I want to put it to this way. For you, you're obviously someone that's been there casting or analyzing all of the matches. Can you honestly tell me how many matches have been relevant out of those, however many there are? I'm talking like Tyloo versus Tiger, Tyloo versus Vici, these kinds of games. How many of you felt have been good matches that have been relevant?
Oh, good matches. Okay, that's a very few. That's just barely a handful. I think maybe two.
It's not even a handful anymore.
3. I'll give you 3 games. Tyloo,
Okay.
Vici, that was a good game because Tyloo showed up and then shouted on Vici. Again, Vici not showing up, right? Then Tiger waking up and dismantling Lucid Dream. That was good to see because I'm like, okay, Tiger is playing at the level we expected. And then, of course, the third game. I don't remember the third game. Doesn't really matter. I think
So there is only 2.
Wait, Tyloo played someone else. Tyloo beat someone yesterday, and the day before yesterday. I was pretty impressed with that. But yeah, what the point I'm trying to make here is the fact that if the games haven't been great, haven't been ideal. We've seen too many teams underperforming, very, very sloppy, messy Counter-Strike. And at one point, you imagine, and I think I'd be forgiven for imagining that, hey, CS, the level of CS, considering how many games are being played, how long these teams have been around, would improve. No, Tyloo seem to be the only team who are growing from strength to strength. They had that loss against Invictus. Apart from that, looking very solid. Everyone else is shitting the bed, Vici included, and that's so disappointing for me. The good side about having so many games is when I see the performances from some of these teams, because they're playing everyone else, right? So like 9 best of 3s being played by each team, that gives me a very good amount of data to work with. So now when I say Lucid Dream and Bren are kind of shit, I have the data to back it up. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy about the fact that I get to see the form of some of these teams against a pretty broad spectrum of skill. You have Mazaalai, Lucid Dream, and Bren at the bottom over there. You have teams like Divine Vendetta, for example, proving that they're winning more than they're losing. They're showing that they can be consistent despite playing with a ping disadvantage from Middle East. So that's a good sign as well. And we probably wouldn't have seen that if it wasn't a format like this. If it was just like a double LM or a single LM, they have one win, that loses the next game. And we'd be like, yeah, it was a fluke, right? So this kind of takes away the fluke aspect, I feel like, for a lot of these teams, and it also kind of exposes the weakness of some of the top dogs. Tiger, you can't afford to have these sort of slow starts. Like where do they stand right now? VG Gaming, we had to lose against Tyloo, expected. Why are they losing, or why are they struggling against other teams in such a miserable manner? Then we of course see Tyloo looking very dominant. This is like 2018 domestic Tyloo, which is a good thing to see. They're no longer struggling that much against the lower tier opposition. They're just steamrolling them, and that is exactly the sort of Tyloo I want to see when they head over to EU to play Pro League or the majors or whatever. Again, assuming they do qualify for it. So I can see where Mitch is coming from, that I feel like after the first 2 weeks, for example, like going to the week number 3, the rest of the teams, they don't really have anything to play for. And that means the games are going to get even more sloppy. And apart from the storyline happening at the bottom of the table, whether it's going to be Bren Lucid or Bren Mazaalai or Lucid Mazaalai getting eliminated, there is no real storyline going into the final week. And I think that would be the major pitfall of this particular format.
Yeah, I definitely think the fact that you've got enough data to now look at when we see all of these teams competing is one of the major benefits, at least, of this format. But I like what you say about Tyloo being the team that seems to be the only one that's really improving at the moment. I'll give a quick shout out to my video up in the top right corner here. I'll put a little link in there. I don't know if you watched it, Blair, or whether you echo those sort of thoughts, but I think you do based on some of the previous discussions we've had. Anyway, Pilsky, I think now is probably a good time for us to start actually going and breaking down these teams individually based on their performances so far in the PAL Summer 2020. So I want to start off from the bottom. We'll go from the negatives to the positives. And to start off, obviously, we have to talk about Bren, Mazaalai, and Lucid. Now, things may potentially change going into this final week. Again, we're recording this on Monday the 6th, which is before the final week of regular season of PAL Summer 2020. But to talk about Bren and Mazaalai, I mean, I guess I'm going to put Mazaalai and Lucid in the same category in that we're probably not surprised to see them at the bottom. And I would want to put Bren into that category as well. It's just that we haven't seen them playing in this level of competition before. So I did have maybe a little bit of hope internally that, we haven't seen much from Bren. We haven't seen them qualifying for anything really. Maybe this is their chance to kind of break out and perform and sort of show us what the Philippines region has got. But short of that one good result where they started off the competition, Blair, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was against Tiger, the team that they beat. Short of that, we haven't really seen anything from Bren. So is this much of a surprise to you, Pilsky? Would you have expected to see more from any of these teams?
I think Mazaalai is like a team that I'm not really expecting a whole lot. I know that they can play a lot of teams close, but I don't really think that they have like I don't know. They're just like an average team, I feel like they're a very gatekeepery team at the moment. Whereas at least D13, in terms of being under Tiger in the Mongolians, they have some like young players who can actually step up and play to a pretty insane level. As for Bren, I was quietly like hoping they would do something because I saw them beat Tiger and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then I was like getting hyped. I'm like, oh man, this is like their breakout tournament. Like if you're beating Tiger, you should be able to, showcase some results. And then they just fucking lost to every single other team in the entire tournament after they beat like one of the harder teams. So it's rough. Like they start off with two hard games and then they go through some easier games and they're still just losing to some of the ESEA teams that they should be very, very familiar with kind of thing. So that's a bit rough. And the other team, Lucid, I mean, to be fair, at this point, Beyond's looking better and better. So as for Lucid, after losing CBBK and shuffling around a bunch of players, I'm not expecting them to do anything. If they do anything, they're overperforming in my mind, and they're making the best of a bad situation. Even though Thailand has like quite a few good players and stuff, their team is like, I feel like for the last little while, kind of like in a bit of a free fall and just sort of trying to make whatever happen they can while they try to rebuild.
Maybe you can touch on that a little bit then, Blair. For Lucid Dream, obviously I can look at the scoreboard, I can look at the results, and I can say it's clearly not working for them. But it seems like they obviously haven't been able to find a good, solid replacement for CBBK, and they've kind of fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, but even if CBBK was here, I don't know. Like it's not about firepower. Like you have John Olsen, you have PDC. John Olsen being the standout player for the team, but again, he needs to drop like 35 kills every single game to win them some of the matches that they lost. PDC being highly inconsistent and not being as impactful as he was once upon a time. We have Fox, we have 789, Leaf. They have their moments, right? Leaf, I think, has one of the highest clutch percentages in a tournament, but that's because the games are so rough for them. It's so scrappy. The map pool looks like the old map pool of Lucid Dreams, except for the fact that they can't play it the way they were able to play it earlier. And honestly, coming into this event, I agree with you. It looked like they would take some time to kind of like get back to the level that we expected them to get back to, but it's not happening. Like I saw the first game they played in PAL 2020, and I saw the last map they played so far. There's no improvement. It's the same old, and I don't know where to put my finger on, honestly. Like it's like that game against D13, for example. It was messy as hell. It was a very close game. But at the back of my mind, I was like, D13 just looked like the better team. Individually, they look better, just based off an eye test. I mean, you look at players like Annihilation, Rate, and Score from D13. I'm like, these kids are sharp. And we used to talk about how Thai CS has all these star aimers and whatnot. But I feel like, even against some of these up-and-coming youngsters from Mongolia, maybe from China, they're not really... They've been around for a while. Remember, most of these players on Lucid have been around for a while, and I feel like at one point they've maybe hit their plateau. I don't think they're really going to go much up from here. You look at Beyond, for example, and how good Beyond look at the moment. But even for Beyond, I feel like they are pushing that ceiling up a little bit. But you look at the thrashing they receive at the hands of Tyloo, for example, right? I mean, it hurts me to say this, Pilsky, but I feel like Thai CS, unless some new fresh blood comes in and some new configuration, some crazy new lineup, like how we saw from D13, I don't see them really doing much. I don't see a real breakout happening from the region, apart from Beyond maybe pushing it to being a top 3 team in Asia. I think this is it for Lucid Dream.
Yeah, I think Beyond might be okay going forward, and they've taken a while to get going. But you have to look at the fact that this Lucid Dream squad, it's like barely even a team. They've had these 2 guys join a month ago, and then CBBK leave less than a month ago. It's like they've replaced over half their team. It's not even the same team anymore, and it's basically just the 2 main players in the team trying to do what they can and trying to hard carry, which would be PTC and John Olsen, and the other guy is just trying to put the pieces together as best they can. Like they haven't had enough time to actually play like a decent team, and they're getting thrown up against a lot of pretty good teams here. So I'm not sure if they'll ever become a good team again. I don't even really look at Lucid Dream as a team at the moment. I kind of just look at them as a mixed team at the moment and just see if they can improve or see if this is a team that's actually going to try to have the motivation that the odd squad had to be one of the best in SEA and maybe try to push some of the other teams. But if that never happens, then it never happens.
One thing that I've talked to a few people about recently when I've been talking about the Thai region is it seems like they're kind of just being pulled along a little bit by nature of the fact that they keep getting invited into a lot of competitions. You look back at Dreamhack Spring and that kind of thing they qualified for, but there's a few instances now where they've been invited to stuff, and I almost feel like you can't really justify the invite for the Thai region at the moment. Maybe beyond based on the results that they've had here in PAL Summer 2020. But I think we really only think, or the community even really maybe only thinks that they are as good as they are or what have you, by virtue of the fact that we're seeing them play in a lot of stuff, not by nature of the fact that they're actually qualifying for it and performing well in a lot of things. You know, what's to say that they're any better necessarily than someone like BTRG or whatever? Obviously, BTRG is not qualifying for stuff, so that's why. But what does it matter when Lucid doesn't have to qualify? You know what I mean? Like, anyway,
yeah,
that's a discussion that is kind of going down a bit of a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I'm just waiting for, I think Beyond is a team at the moment that's playing below the level of its pieces. And I think Lucid Dream is just a weird mixed team that's scrambling to get the pieces together. And I think there needs to be like some kind of a shake-up where this Lucid team merges with that other team, Sigma or whatever it is. And they try to make a better configuration of players because it's not going to work, I don't think.
All right, well, fair enough. Obviously, we're not that too keen on the Thai region at the moment. Although, I will say, and when we talk a bit more about Beyond later on, maybe we have some positives to touch on. I do want to talk about D13, though. And I've written down in our notes here that their results have been a little bit disappointing. But I've got a question mark there. Because in my mind, I think it is a little bit disappointing, especially from what we saw in Road to Rio. They managed to make it through to the semi-finals. I probably would have expected to see them at this point in the competition above Divine Vendetta and probably above Beyond. Admittedly, Beyond has overperformed my expectations, but I thought that they would be challenging for somewhere around 5th or 4th. And at the moment, they're sort of sitting in 7th place. So have they disappointed you, Bleh, or have they been sitting at the level that you might have expected from them?
I think they've disappointed me in the aspect that when they play good, they level up my expectations, right? I didn't really expect much from them coming into this event, but then when I saw a couple of games today, I saw especially these youngsters perform, like, wow, they're really sharp. They're looking really, really good. And then they kind of disappoint, right? Like, let's take a look at the games they played. They beat Lucid Dream, a very, very scrappy game. And I'm like, okay, this is just a very messy, ugly team, right? I mean, if you're going to struggle that much to beat a team like Lucid Dream, I don't see them going far. Then they face up against Tyloo. They lose, but it wasn't a bad loss. It was like, what, 16-10, 16-11, something like that. And I'm like, okay, they're getting some decent rounds against a team like Tyloo, which isn't shabby at all. They seem to be adventurous enough to go for a few map picks, or wild map picks like that. I think we saw a Vertigo train coming out there. They beat Mazaalai, the domestic brethren. And again, domestic matchups, even though D13 are better than Mazaalai, domestic matchups can be messy. The fact that they beat them pretty convincingly, I'm like, okay, they're looking good. They face up against Beyond. Some close series over there. That could have easily gone the way of D13. On one of the games, actually came down to it being overtime on Nuke, a map which Beyond really do enjoy playing. And then you look at the game against Divine Vendetta, that was a disappointment, right? That was a smack disappointment right there. And then they face off against Bren, again coming down to overtime. So they're a question mark for me. But this team, where I had almost zero expectations going to this event, I'm going to take away the good things. Those three youngsters are the next generation. They are the next generation of the potential Asian Supers. A Score, he is sick. He's pure filth. He's amazing. Annihilation, my fucking god. I haven't seen an opera like that, a young opera like that come out in Asia in forever. Like, when was the last time? Maybe I think it was AE, but he was nowhere close to being as consistent as Annihilation is in how he hits those shots. And I was speaking to, I think it was with Dinko and Jason, the other palcasters, about how I would love to, I'd have a little wet dream where I'd love to see Urcast, Dobu, those three kids in a team. That would be pretty sick. I know that's me fantasizing again, as usual, but D13 for me is more of positives than negatives. I didn't expect much from them. Yes, they should have beaten a couple of teams they lost to. Some of this game should have been cleaner, but I feel like for them it's more about a growing phase, about a learning phase. And you know what? I'll take that.
Cool. Do you have anything to add here for D13, Pilski? I mean, you don't need to. We can move on if you don't.
I'll just say that I think if you look at the results and the history for D13, it's more of the same in PAL. They're a team with an extremely high ceiling that can beat teams that are better than them and that punch above their weight when they're having a good day. But they constantly lose to teams they shouldn't be losing to, or almost lose to teams that they shouldn't be losing to, which is just a trademark of a team that's inexperienced, doesn't have the consistency to beat teams around their level, or to consistently win when it's required of them. But when they feel like they're the underdogs, they can really cause some problems for like your Tyloos and teams like that.
All right, well then let's move on to Divine Vendetta. I know you mentioned them very briefly there, Blair, and this is something that you've wanted to speak about, as I understand. Obviously, the results from Divine Vendetta are actually, I would say, pretty decent in this competition, but there's a little bit of a cloud of uncertainty maybe hanging over that. I've seen a couple of tweets, most notably from Dobu, who he just basically went out and said he didn't think that the Mongolian teams would lose to Divine Vendetta if it wasn't for the ping on the Singapore server.
Yeah, that's again all ifs and buts, right? And you gotta. I don't know what to say about that. I really don't want to get into it. I feel like it gets very murky at that point in time, like whether it's a ping and whatnot. You got to remember this Middle Eastern teams. All the years they've had to play some of these online qualifiers or close qualifiers, and they're playing from Dubai, and the servers are over in fucking Singapore. They've had to deal with that every single time. So now for a change. I saw the pings they were getting, and I'm like, holy shit, those are incredible pings. They were getting like what, I think 70 to Singapore. I get 60 to Singapore, like 50s to 60s, and I'm much closer than they are. So somehow the routing seems to be fixed. They seem to be getting better ping and whatnot, and yeah, that's good for them, right? Pokemon Tyloo had over 100 ping. He's playing from Pakistan, but they still beat. Who was the last team they played against? Vici. How close did that get? Right? I know Vici might be underperforming, but the fact that it got down to the wire with Kaze literally sitting on the server because in Malaysia and the pings being very equal, they performed very good against Vici. It's just unfortunate that this is not on land. They're not playing on an equal playing field. But from what I've seen in Divine Vendetta, they have a game plan. The players they have are sharp. Like they are really, really fucking sharp. Havoc and Edge Ramp, but the compared to unknown players like Davdov, Tyke, alongside Pokemon. I mean, these guys are showing that they can pretty much hold their own against some of the teams out there. But then you see the results against Lucid Dream, where they just got, just destroyed by Lucid. And you're like, wait, how does that happen? How does that work? They beat all the 3 Mongolian teams. They take Vici all the way to third map, overtime, etc., and they get dismantled by Lucid Dream, because Lucid Dream have the best ping to Singapore. Now, that is a very valid reason. Could be a reason. I don't know, right? So it's a big question mark for me, but I can't take away from the fact that from an eye test, keeping the pings aside, keeping the aim deals aside, they're playing some pretty clean Counter-Strike. They're showing a deceptively deep map pool. They seem to be picking maps where I'm like, wait, they've only played this once. They haven't really done much on it. And then they show up and they have a game plan. The mid-round calling is pretty good. The comms seem pretty good. They seem to thrive when, it comes down to 3v3 scenarios. Huge clutch plays coming out from them. So I feel overall, keeping all the drama aside about the pings, they've really put in the work from just a random pug team called Camel Riders who qualified for the Asian Minor to what we see of them today. It's been a massive, massive upgrade, and I really want to see them on LAN. I really wish we had an Extremes LAN-like event where we could really see them play against these guys, and then we could have a real answer as to where these guys stand.
Maybe if the guys at Extremes LAN are listening and watching, you could host something pretty early in 2021, maybe. Like, obviously, we're not getting anything in 2020, but hey, as soon as restrictions ease, we're pretty keen to see some of this sort of stuff going on LAN. What's your take, Pilski? Obviously, we haven't been able to watch too much from Divine Vendetta. I don't think we cast any of their games in Road to Rio from memory. So I can't really make a comment based on their gameplay all that much, but based on their results, at least, it seems like they're putting a better name forward than half of the teams in this competition. And yes, you can talk about ping and what have you. I do find it a little bit interesting that they were able to beat Tiger 2-0 and D13 2-0. And then they lose Lucid Dream. So that is, to me, raising a few question marks. But, I mean, the results are there, and the results on paper say that they deserve to be in this competition.
Yeah, I'm going to reserve my opinion until I see them more often. We've only seen them in a couple of competitions, and it's quite often that you'll see a team have a good streak of form, or maybe they start to get worked out a little bit more once they play a couple of series. I haven't seen their gameplay yet, but it's impressive enough just to be a fairly new team, to take a map off of Vici, to play a lot of these good teams very, very close, if not upsetting them. So that's pretty impressive already. It's nice to see a team coming out of the Middle East. It's almost like I don't know, like a NASA 2.0 or something like that. And it's good to see Havoc playing again because he was one of the players where I watched him play. You know, some of the other Middle Eastern guys on that old NASA team didn't really look like they had their brains switched on a lot of the time. They would peek random stuff quite often, or they would just like double or triple AWP and like run at people and stuff like that. But Havoc's always a player that he looks like he actually has his head screwed on, and he plays really good CS. So it's good to see him playing on a good team again.
All right, let's move on from Divine Vendetta then. We've given our piece, I suppose, and we'll talk a little bit about the next crop of teams. These are the teams that are sitting 4-2. Tiger, Vici, Beyond, and Invictus. Now, this is a bit of a motley crew, you know? Like, I don't know that you would have necessarily bet that you would see all of these teams 4-2. I probably would have put Tiger and Vici at something like a 5-1, having lost only to Tyloo or to each other at this point in the competition. I've got to say, I'm impressed by what we've seen from Beyond. I think Invictus have done pretty well. They pushed Vici and Tyloo in some respects. Oh, I think it was just Vici, maybe. Tyloo, I think 2-0'd them. Either way, it doesn't really matter too much. They've got some results on the board.
I think Invictus beat Tyloo.
Was it? That must have been it, yeah. Early on in the competition. That's the one loss that Tyloo has. So
the first one, yeah.
Yeah, Invictus have lost to a weird team maybe then for some reason. But it's like, it's the same thing as what's happening toward the bottom of the standings, but it's like the positive version. It's like they're beating teams that are good and you're thinking, great, you know, these guys are looking good, and then they lose to a shit team and you're just thinking, like, why did that happen? As opposed to losing to shit teams and then beating good teams. It's like, you know
Invictus
what I mean?
has only lost to Vici, and then they've lost maps to other teams, but I think
Invictus is 4-0-2, so they must have lost to someone else as well.
Okay, let me look through.
They lost to Vici and they lost to Tiger. The good teams.
That's not too bad.
Yeah. And they beat Tyloo.
They're taking maps.
Yeah.
So they're looking pretty good.
So they must have a pretty easy last week then, Bleh. We might actually even see them... I don't want to say top the competition. What's the last game? I think it's Tyloo versus Tiger. So let me have a look here because...
I actually don't know.
Yeah, it's Tiger and Tyloo.
Who you wanting to know?
No, Tiger, Tyloo is the final game for Tyloo. Yes. They also have to play against Lucid and Divine Vendetta. I probably would say they beat Divine Vendetta and Lucid. I want to say Tyloo versus Tiger should be a good game, but I almost have like half a mind to just say that I think Tyloo kind of butt fucks them kind of thing.
Tyloo's going to butt fuck them. I think Tyloo's going to butt fuck everyone. The way they're playing right now, it's a fuck you brand. You remember the 2018 fuck you brand of Tyloo Counter-Strike where no one stood a chance? They're just literally just deathmatching you, just running down and just steamrolling you. That's what I saw from them against Beyond, and that was glorious. Beyond didn't know what the fuck to do. Like Beyond, and they know how to play these maps. They're just sitting there like, what the fuck do we do, guys? Like, literally, what the fuck do we do right now? Because fucking attackers over in one corner. Somebody was the most reasonable player in that team. Somebody was sitting back. I'm like, wait, why is somebody not pushing a smoke? And because Danking's pushing in with the AWP. Attacker's running and living up to his name. And I'm just... But I know they're going to disappoint me soon. So I'm so scared and wary of getting excited about this. But for that glorious couple of best of threes, I was a happy man.
I think Tyloo are benefiting quite largely from Slowly's addition. Like, obviously, Danking, someone to talk about, you know, he's sort of a superstar AWPer, but I think Slowly brings something that they might have been lacking for quite a while, in that he can be that more sort of cerebral and kind of consistent player. You know, when you've got an attacker or Summer or somebody kind of popping off, like Tyloo's going to win the game. But if they're not popping off and, you know, you have someone that's not quite there to sort of be that rock solid kind of guy, I think Slowly is that guy that sort of adds that rock solid gameplay to Tyloo.
Yeah, he does, and I really I'm glad you brought him up. Right, if you look at all the players in Tyloo, like apart from Fancy, aka Summer, if you look at Danking, you look at Attacker, you look at somebody, and you know you see all these crazy plays. You know, they go through smokes and flashbangs, and when it works, it's genius. When it doesn't, I'm like, you're brain fucking dead, mate. You look at Slowly.
He doesn't go being Australian.
Almost went full Aussie there.
It's a good try.
It's a good try. But Slowly doesn't go for those plays. He doesn't go for these crazy ass, you know, low percentage plays where if it works out, he wins the round. If it doesn't, no. He's the guy who's going to consistently get you solid kills, falls back, survives, utility usage, really on point. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't really go for any hero plays. And I agree with you. I think Tyloo need a player like that. And I think he might be not Danking. Danking is great and all that. It's very flashy. But I think Slowly is actually, over time, the more I see them, I feel like he's a better fit. I feel like he is the stable pillar, you know, the pillar holding everything together, holding this four madmen in the team together. And I feel like if they're going to go far with this lineup, he is going to be the center, the focus of this particular lineup.
I want to get your thoughts on this as well, Pilsky, but I do just want to say that if we made our Chinese dream team again currently at this point in time, I would heavily consider having Slowly on my team.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm kind of worried for Tyloo that they're setting themselves up for disappointment internationally because of the way that they're playing lately. But it is a good way to consistently qualify through your region. I'm just keen to see Tyloo at their first international tournament, whether they stick to their guns with their style or whether they're going to start to try to play a little bit more of that EU-esque style, because they've got a lot of the same pieces that were playing many, many times internationally and playing it the last time they went to Pro League. So they should be well aware of what the pitfalls are of playing the style that they're attempting at the moment. Yeah, I mean, I think Slowly's fantastic. I said that literally from the second that he joined the team. I thought that these were two really, really good additions coming in from eHome, because they were two of the best players online in China outside of Tyloo, even including, your boys over on Vici. So.
Yeah, well, speaking of Vici, we haven't really touched on Vici all that much. We kind of jumped the gun. Blair was so excited to talk about Tyloo, which was technically supposed to come after we talked about Invictus, Vici, Tiger, and Beyond. But hey, we did mention Invictus, and we also talked a fair bit about Beyond a little bit earlier on. We think they're doing pretty decently for themselves. But I think on the other end of the side of the, or other side of the coin, I suppose, is that, Vici, like, despite being 4-0-2, which overall is still a decent kind of result, I don't know, I feel like you're maybe a bit disappointed with what you've seen from Vici so far in this competition, Blair, just based on our private conversations. But do you want to put anything out, officially?
Yeah, I mean, what is the one thing we talk about Vici when it comes to Asian CS? They can't beat Tyloo, but they can beat everyone else convincingly. That's the word, right? They can beat everyone else convincingly. Right now, fine. They started off with a 2-0 win over Bren. Good job. They beat Lucid Dream. Good job. Two teams are right now at the bottom of the table, mind you. Faced up against Tyloo, we're like, oh yeah, boy, let's fucking go. There's going to be a spicy affair. No, Tyloo just took a dump right all over them. 16-7, 16-7, back-to-back in 2 maps. Okay, Tyloo beating them, expected. Maybe not this brutally, though. This was the most brutal beatdown I've seen from Tyloo in the past 5 or 6 series they've played. Then it faced up against Invictus. They beat Invictus, but what was the scoreline, right? Like that, for example, that Mirage game.
Yeah.
No, it actually the two maps they beat Invictus on were very convincing. And one map, I think on Mirage, they had a pretty substantial lead and they just shat the bed for the second half. And I'm like, okay, fine. Invictus third best team in Asia, they still look pretty good showing. The win against Divine Vendetta was miserable to watch, and then they lost to Tiger. So the loss against Divine Vendetta, what hits me there was no one really stepped up. Kaze was having a very rough game. That we keep talking about Kaze and Jamyoung being consistent at a decently good level as a win condition for Vici. And the Kaze doesn't show up, it suddenly it's exposed. The team lies very exposed. Jamyoung, he can do what he can. Now you're relying on Advent to frag. You're relying on Almond to go above and beyond, who we know is not consistent at all. And then we have Zoking, whose role, the way his role is defined, is you can't expect too many big games from him. He is that sort of player, right? He's the entry guy. He's going to go on in. He's going to be the sacrificial player for his team. So you can't expect him to drop 30 bombs at like even 20 kills consistently. So Kaze not showing up, that's a problem. The game against Tiger yesterday, I think it was the final 2 maps, they got 16-7 back-to-back by Tiger, and in which one of the maps Kaze had his worst map ever in the past 5 years. The previous time he had a game worse than that was when he was playing for MVP Cardinal against a Tyloo in 2015, when the HLTV rating was like the first one, right? I mean, I don't want to put the blame on Kaze, but suddenly now you start to question. You're like, wait, if Kaze has a bad day, and he's human, he's been carrying his team for a long, long time with Freeman and now with Jamyoung, then what does the team have? It just fell apart. That was what was scary for me. It wasn't about them having a close series and losing out in overtime. Tiger, great team. I mean, they're really, really solid. But against Divine Vendetta, I don't want to put the blame on the ping. They were getting outplayed in some of those rounds. So many close matchups going to overtime. It shouldn't be happening. Maps where you look at Vici, like, yeah, they're probably the best team in Nuke. They didn't look like that to me. So if Kaze doesn't show up in an important game, or if Jamyoung just shits the bed on one day, what do? That's where it starts to fear, man. And we keep talking about a new blood being added, maybe someone like a Flying replacing Almond, and we keep hypothesizing about it. But at one point, it needs to happen, because the flaws are very evident. They don't have the star power, the firepower to back up the brains of Advent, because you might have all the brains in the world, but if you're not going to hit heads, it's going to fall apart.
I agree. I'm almost keen to like make a video purely talking about Vici, similar to the Tyloo one that I did, and just sort of try and break down what they need to do or what kind of change they might need to make. So suppose keep an eye on out for that. Maybe I'll get around to it. Maybe I'll be too lazy. I don't know. Pilsky, let's talk Vici and Tiger then. I mean, I know you haven't watched a whole lot of these PAL games because you've been busy casting other games, but you know, is it time for Vici to make a change? I think I've asked you this before, and like, what's going on? You know, do you think that they're maybe not quite hitting that level that we would have hoped from them? I think that's obvious to say, right?
Yeah, I've been saying for a while that Vici's missed their window, and it's really sad because they actually have qualified for overseas events. And I've said like a number of times now that missing those overseas events has stunted their growth and meant that they haven't been put as far ahead as they could have been. Like you could have seen some of these guys individually, I reckon, get even better than they were, because that's where I think they did a lot of their improvement. Yeah, I think the individuals on Vici have been too inconsistent for a while. I think Jam Young is he's wasting his prime right now. He's like so good at this point that you're kind of just like wasting you know, his potential.
Where else can he go though? You know, like that's the problem.
Well, chuck him in Invictus. I reckon they'll be better.
Maybe.
Chuck him in instead of one of the other guys in Invictus. I don't even know. Like I'm looking at the Invictus squad. You know, they're good. I almost feel like they almost have better and more interesting pieces than Vici do at the moment. But at the same time, it's like you could be overrating them just because they're the new thing. I think my problem with Kaze, and this has been my problem with Kaze for a while, particularly when he plays Tyloo, is that he doesn't make plays consistently enough, and he plays far too safe a lot of the time. There's too many games from Kaze where he just goes 10 for 10 and he saves or whatever, and nothing else is happening around the map. It's like if Zoking, like particularly on the CT side, it's like if Zoking's not having a big half, it's just way too one-dimensional kind of thing. And I think, you know, if he's let loose a little bit more, that might unlock the potential of the team. You need some more aggressive players to create space for Orman. That's when I think Vici have looked their best, is when Kaze takes it on himself to start making plays. Zoking's feeling confident, and then you have someone like Orman who actually he performs better because there's more space in the game for him rather than him just, you know, being basically left to take 50-50 aim tools, because I don't think he can win a lot of those in the current form that he's in. So in my mind, I feel like they've missed their window, just to summarize. And I think there needs to be some, you know, synthesis of this Invictus and Vici team, and you could make something good. I can't tell you what players I'd you know, want to see, but particularly for Invictus, I think the main three pieces that are really good for them is that Shadowpie is pretty good at reading the game and he's pretty consistent. And then you got Aviva, who's pretty fantastic, a little inconsistent as well. Sometimes he drops a 30, sometimes he's okay. And I think yeah, I mean, yeah, at the same time, but like he plays a more aggressive role almost than Orman, like I think. So you can give him a bit of benefit of the doubt, and as well as the fact that he's playing for a more like a less consistent team, like a less good team than Vici. So maybe that's adding to the inconsistency. But I think flying, I've said since that Russian-Chinese mix of Invictus that flying is actually fucking sick. Like I've seen him drop 90, 100 kills in a best of 3 and just like on T-side train, run up on top of blue train and kill the entire enemy team. Like he needs to be on a top Chinese team, and I don't know who you would take out of Vici to do it. There's some obvious candidates, but the problem is that this is the massive problem with fusing the two Invictus and Vici teams, is that the star players, the players that are the best for these teams, play the same roles. So I don't know how the fuck you're going to do that.
Someone's going to have to take a bullet, really, and sort of, you know, do something similar to what Liaz did moving over to 100 Thieves, you know, change up their role or do something different. Maybe it's going to stunt them as a player, but it may put them in a better team and may have more success for the region as a whole. Either way, we haven't really talked too in depth about Tiger. Now, I don't think that there's too much to really dive into that we haven't said in previous episodes, but obviously we'll touch on it briefly just for the sake of talking about everyone before we move on to Dreamhack OCE. So, Bleh, I have in the past and in that Urcast episode, I sort of made the point that I thought at that time Tiger was the best team in the region. Now, I've definitely retracted that. I'm back on the Tyloo hype train with you. But have you sort of felt that maybe Tiger have even fallen out of the top 3? Because I noticed when you said Invictus, third best team in the Asia region, that sort of piqued my interest a little bit.
I think right now Tiger coming in, right? They didn't play Pro League. Obviously, there's that video of me just going on a rant saying, "Oh, Tiger would shit on Bren, they would shit on blah blah blah." And right now,
they should.
They should. They shot on me because I got like, you know, mud in my face. So thank you for that, Tiger. But apart from that, like if you look at the first win, right? They beat Invictus. You're like, okay, kind of close series, doing pretty well. They lost to fucking Bren. Fucking Bren. Like what the fuck was that all about, right? And then they go up against Beyond. Okay, Beyond a challenging team. But what did Beyond always struggle against? It struggled against the top teams outside of Southeast Asia. And yet Beyond took them to all the way to the wire. Then Lucid Divine Vendetta, fine ping issues, yada yada yada. I don't care. And then now I'm having my big questions. I'm having real big questions. Like, are they even the best Mongolian team right now? Are they even a top 3, top 4 team right now? Right? You don't know. And then suddenly they show up. They plug in their mice. They plug in the fucking switch on the fucking monitors, and they're like, all right, let's play Counter Strike. And they just absolutely obliterate Lucid. And then they had a close first map against Vici, which was a nuke, which they almost brought back, into overtime and won, which Vici won. Fair enough. Vici are very, very good at nuke. And then 16-7, 16-7, the final 2 maps. And suddenly I'm like, okay, Tiger's back. They look really good. But you can't, if you're aiming to be a top team in Asia, aiming to be the top 3 team alongside Tyloo and Vici, or even claiming going for the crown of Tyloo's, which is looking a little above the reach at the moment, you can't have these level of inconsistent performances, especially against teams you should be beating with your eyes closed. And you can't afford that to happen. Urkas has been looking very good. He's been looking extremely solid. He's been looking like the most stable player in this lineup, top ranking almost every single time. But everyone else, they seem to be dropping off and performing and not performing. Like you're talking about NCL, talking about Cabal 9, even Dobo included. And that, for me, it worries me. Your win condition, like having these sort of stomp wins over the likes of Lucid Dream or Vici, should not rely on all 5 players stepping up, right? It should be much more comfortable. It should be much more easier, where Cabal might have an off day, NCL might miss a couple of shots, and yet you should be winning. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So right now, I don't think they're the top 3 team in Asia. Would I put Invictus there? Maybe. Invictus, they look a little sloppy here and there, but they have beaten Tyloo. I don't think anyone else has done that. They have had very close games against Tiger and Vici as well. So I feel like Invictus are more consistent, and I would go for consistent Counter-Strike results over a team who can, just stomp a team and then against the same team just lose in a shitty series. So yeah, Tiger, mixed bag for me.
I think our opinions can very much change, though. Obviously, what we're talking about predominantly so far in this episode has been PAL Summer 2020, which has really just been a group stage, round robin, end of the day. You can't draw that many conclusions from these games. I'm going to be interested to see what happens in playoffs, how those seedings end up panning out. If Tiger gets a rough seed to begin with, that could be interesting. If they're able to get deep into the tournament, I think that then reinforces our discussions about them being a top 3 team. But I do want to move away from PAL Summer 2020. We've spent a lot of time, in fact, more time than we anticipated, talking about that. And we're not even into playoffs yet. So we'll be talking about PAL Summer 2020 again in another episode. The next one, obviously, whether that's next week or in a couple of weeks' time, don't know. We'll see how things pan out. There's not a whole lot else going on, so it might be in a couple of weeks' time, because we tend not to have too much to talk about when there's only one big competition. That said, in the last week as well, Pilski, we saw the OCE qualifier for Dreamhack Summer. Now, this is a tournament that we had previously done, obviously Dreamhack Spring, and we wanted to see how things are going to go going into summer as well. So just having a look at the results, we see Order and Rooster are the teams that have qualified, and Chiefs missed out this time. So Chiefs is the team that we saw obviously playing in spring, but they didn't manage to re-qualify. They've had some weird stuff going on with their roster lately as well, which we didn't get to talk about in the previous episode, so now might be a good time to bring it up. Ofnu departed from Avant, which we also didn't mention, but that's the news, and it seems like now he's in this Chiefs roster. Now, I don't know what's going on. Have they benched Hugh? Is he being replaced? Is it something that's only happening for the short while? I'm not so sure. Either way, they didn't qualify for Dreamhack Summer, so it's Order and Rooster. Give me your thoughts on how this is all sort of panned out.
It's good to see Rooster performing well. I think we'll touch on that more later, because I think we have a question about that. So I'll leave that for the time being. I don't know what the hell is going on with Chiefs. They play with 2 different players in this series. I think Apoc Dud had to leave, it looks like, and they play with their coach against Rooster. So that's a bit weird. I think if Chiefs had a bit more of a stable roster, they would be maybe a bit better in that series. I don't know what the fuck's going on that they're not playing with Hugh. He's like their best player. I have no inside info, but if I was just an outsider that walked in and didn't see Hugh there and saw Avant dropping a player, well, you could, 1+1 that, but I don't know what the hell's going on. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting competition. Order's staying consistent, which is good. It's not good, I suppose, to see Avant's not in that to play. I think Ground Zero played pretty decently, which is good. I think Ground Zero actually is playing pretty okay at the moment, which is nice to see. I think Truckers might be on a downward trend at the moment. Like they seem to be a little bit inconsistent as to where they were when they were upsetting, Renegades a little bit and doing well. Yeah, apart from that, there isn't a whole lot to see from this competition. I want to see this Chiefs roster actually get their shit together and get a solid squad that is actually playing consistently. I think it's towards like maybe in a month or two away that Vexite's actually the requisite age, like 16 or whatever it is, or I don't know how old he should be 16 soon. So that will mean that they can have a more consistent roster. Yeah, not much else to say apart from that, I suppose.
Okay, well, one thing I will just mention there as well, you sort of talked about Avant. I believe they're getting the direct invite. They won, obviously, ANZ Champs Season 1, which is where that invite has come from. If you remember, Season 1 of ANZ Champs was supposed to have an international Dreamhack spot that qualified it. They didn't get to go to that, but they do get the direct invite into Dreamhack Summer 2020, so they didn't have to go through the qualifier. I mean, it's a bit of a bummer, obviously, that they're not able to go internationally, but as it is, they at least get something out of that slot. And I assume, obviously, that the other team that would go through into this would be Renegades getting the invite from winning Spring. So that would be my assumption as the 4 teams for Oceania. Now, Avant, as far as I'm aware, that's been like announced and that's on Liquidpedia, so that's fair enough. Renegades, that's just my speculation, but I can't see any reason why they wouldn't be the team that would get the invite. So it'll be Renegades, Avant, Order, and Rooster as the 4. And to be honest, I'm pretty keen for that. Like, I think, yeah, I mean, Chiefs miss out, but I'm not that excited actually to watch Chiefs at the moment, given all of the roster changes that have been going on. I want to see them, get a couple of months to sort themselves out. And I'm quite actually interested to see what Rooster can do in a competition like this, because as far as I can remember, this is like the first competition of this kind of a caliber that they've actually qualified for.
Yeah, they look really good at the moment. Like, they're actually playing some proper CS, which is good to see. They're playing instead of relying on any kind of hard carries. It's something I said a lot when we were doing some analysis segments on ANZ Champs of some Rooster games and things like that. They're actually playing team-based Counter-Strike, and they're not just relying on individuals fragging. So it's really good to see quite a well-rounded roster from Rooster. And I'm keen to see. I don't think they're going to be beating any of the top dogs, to be honest. I would be surprised if they're really pushing it. But there's quite a lot of talent in that roster, and I think I'm looking at Rooster. I feel like that's a really good farm team for some of these top teams, and I'm kind of wondering, I keep wondering, you're looking at Chiefs when they made their roster changes. You're looking at some of the instability in a couple of the top teams. They're not farming from Rooster. They're not farming from Truckers. They're not farming from Paradox. Like, there's solid teams, or even Ground Zero. Like, there's solid teams below the top couple of teams, but no one's farming from them, even though there's plenty of talent there. Like, you could almost put together another good, really, really good team.
Do they need to be farming at the moment?
I mean,
Chiefs clearly do, but
well, I don't know if they haven't really had a chance to play properly with this roster. But that's the thing. Like, how long is this Chiefs roster to be together? Do you remember, Jordan?
Which one are you talking about? The new one or the genuine gaming Chiefs roster?
No, not that one. Like the new one.
The new one's only like a couple of months. Like, we haven't even really seen them playing anything before Ofnu joined. Like,
and they haven't
a couple of things, but not really.
Yeah, they haven't even had their full roster half the time, so you can't even quantify how good they are.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, Avant's still, as far as I'm understanding, looking for another player. Like, I don't think they've signed anyone just yet, but I've heard rumors as to who they might be getting. I don't want to sort of discuss rumors in that respect, though, so we'll talk about that maybe next episode if that's sort of locked in. Hopefully it'll be locked in before Dreamhack. Otherwise, I guess they're playing with Kingfisher still. Anyway, let's move on from Dreamhack. Bleh's been very quiet. He's just been chilling, enjoying us.
I honestly haven't watched any of the Aussie games recently.
That's why I didn't even give it to you, because I knew you wouldn't have much to say about that. One thing I will point out before we jump away from it is the Asia Open qualifier is on August 8th, which is in about a month, and then the closed qualifier on the 9th. So that'll mean that Dreamhack Summer OCE is on the 7th of August and the 9th of August, the actual Dreamhack Summer itself, and then for Dreamhack Summer Asia, it's the 14th and the 16th. So looking forward to that in about a month's time. A bit of good Counter-Strike for us to take a look at. Now, Blair, this is where you get to have a bit of a rant, I'm sure, because I'm going to set you up for something pretty good here. ESEA Season 34 Asia. Now, I know this is not a big deal kind of a competition, nothing we get too excited about, but a couple of matches did jump out to me here. The first one is Paper Rex losing 2-1 to Blaze Esports, which is a couple of your boys from India, Mazel, Superkid, and Rossi, and then a guy called Raf from Portugal and Kara from Malaysia. The only person I've heard of there is Mazel. I'm sure you've heard of the Indian fellas, but what's your take on this? I mean, that seems like a really bad result for Paper Rex. Now, what I will say before we dive too far into that is that they did play with DSN. Now, I don't know if that's better or worse for them as a roster than playing with Deathmaker, but it still seems like they haven't found their fifth, and that's not a good result for Paper Rex as far as I'm concerned.
Considering the amount of like resources put into making this lineup and the fact that, the Deathmaker experiment didn't work out, they have DSN playing, all of that, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, that loss is just weird, right? Now, again, taking nothing away from the guys from Blaze, they've been trying quite hard, grinding at the, starting from the bottom. Marzel, I guess everyone might remember him. He was an ex-Optic India lineup infamously, but right now, I'd say he could be considered as the best player in India at the moment, considering some of the old guard have moved on to Valorant. And even if they hadn't moved on to Valorant, I think Marcel was one of the smarter players in the region. In-game leader, also started off as a Pug star, looking really good. Kara, Malaysian kid, I've only seen him in Pugs, and I do believe he played in a very short-lived Orange Esports lineup alongside Raf. Raf, a Portuguese player, but he has, I don't know where exactly in Asia he lives, but he's been in Asia for a while. He's been around the scene for a few years. Again, all young players. And we have Rossi and Superkid. Basically, just I used to remember them from my pugging days in the region. They are just pug stars, and it's good for them. Good for them to take this win. But it just goes to show what a period of crazy uncertainty it is right now in Asian CS. Now, when it comes to online Counter-Strike, it might be like it's happening in EU and NA. You'd be like, yeah, fine, it's online CS, yada, yada, yada. But in Asia, it's mostly been online CS. But even in online CS, we've seen a level of consistency. Like, you don't see teams like from Singapore losing to teams from South Asia, like from India, whatever. And that's all these things happening. I think it just goes to show how crazy it's become when it comes to online CS and these sort of lower tier competition in Asia right now. And yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Blaze. They've put in the work, they've got the win. But for Paper X, I mean, at one point, they got to like decide what they want to do. Where did it go from here, right? They're trying to build a lineup, and now's a good time. The lands aren't back yet. You haven't really qualified for any big events. You're not an RMR. Fuck it. Just get something different. Like, experiment every week. Don't let DSN. Poor guy, let him enjoy his retirement, right? He's at his day in the sun. Let him enjoy his retirement. Get someone else new. Try. You have nothing to lose instead of being in this sort of like a limbo stage where you're losing to teams like Blaze.
Billy, I know you sort of seemed like you wanted to jump in there early on in the piece.
Oh, nah, it's all good. I don't have anything to say.
Sure you do. You got a shit-eating grin on right now. What's going on?
I don't have anything to say.
All right. Well, then you can talk about Huatsai result. Huatsai got a 2-0 over Mazaalai, though. For those that don't know, Huatsai is obviously Splashkey's team. I follow them a little bit just to see how he's going. And I wanted to get the scoop here, Pilsky, because I was thinking, like, how the fuck does Huatsai beat Mazaalai, a team that, I thought Huatsai is not a team that's really trying all that hard. I had to sort of have a chat with Splashkey. I had one earlier today when I was trying to get him on the podcast. And I was like, do you guys even prac and stuff? And he's like, yeah, like they do prac, but they're not taking the game seriously. They're not trying to be a team that's like beating everyone. Obviously Splashkey's going to university and all that sort of stuff at the moment. And seems like they're playing kind of, what he said was part-time, right? If that makes sense. So I don't know what the circumstances are for Mazaalai, but I think that's, again, a pretty bad result for Mazaalai.
I think Mazaalai playing pretty fucking part-time as well. So yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Pilsky?
What is there to play for in ESEA Season 34? Because I remember looking at the prize pool for the last one, and I think it was like first place was $600. So
no, it's 3,000 USD for first place and 1,500 for second.
Okay, look, that's okay for a whole season to play.
No, but the thing is, Pilsky, it's not even really a whole season. This season is just a single Elim bracket. Single Elim BO3 bracket.
How long does it go for?
Well, it's an 16-team bracket. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds if you get through to the grand final.
All right.
Well, the 4 BO3s to win $3,000, which, that's like 4 days' work, essentially, I guess.
I think Mazaalai is pretty average, so it's not surprising to see them lose to Huatsai. Like Huatsai has some okay players. I mean, they don't have Pinkai anymore, but they have Splashkey. I would have to see like the match page. I would have to see who played well and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like it's online CS. Mazaalai is pretty average. Anyone can beat anyone. Like it's not really an interesting result to me. I'll have to say that. Like I just don't even really care that happened. Really,
I find it interesting because Mazaalai is a team that's sort of been consistently in these RMR tournaments and been qualifying for all these sort of quote unquote bigger tournaments. We haven't seen anything from Huatsai, so I just sort of think like it kind of reinforces the storyline that Mazaalai is sort of falling off a cliff a little bit. You have a thought there, Bleh? You were making some noises.
Yeah, I agree. I feel that it's a pretty good gauge as to where Mazaalai are right now. Again, depends on the region, right? You're talking about how the slot allocation for the regions, it's just that some regions have higher concentration of better teams than others do. Like I feel like BTRG right now, even though I have, BTRG kind of a meme team, with extra impression, not really winning that many events, I feel like they do a better job again compared to Mazaalai. I don't think they'd lose to Huatsai, for example, right? And it's just the way it is. I don't see this Mazaalai lineup really surviving much longer. They might still do after the RMR, but honestly, I feel like it's most like a swan song for some of these players. Like you look at Zilkenberg, look at Machine Gun, have some moments of brilliance here and there, but I'm sorry, but like there's so many younger, newer players coming out here much better than you. And yeah, I agree with Mitch that it's a matchup where out of context it doesn't intrigue me either. But with the context of Mazaalai are playing for the you're playing for the RMR against some of the better teams out there, and you're losing to teams like Huatsai, I mean, why are they even playing the open season, right? There must be a reason for that. And the fact that they're playing it means they must have some mental commitment to it. And despite that they're losing to what is basically just a random mixed team of a bunch of players who no one wants to pick up. So
yeah, it's like kind of like a tier 2 tournament, really. Like there's not that many strong teams. In fact, like Tiger's playing. Tiger's probably the best team in there. Beyond is in there. And then past that, it's like, what? Mazaalai, Paper X, Sigma?
It's probably just like they're using it as like a practice tournament, like almost like scrims, to be honest, maybe, right? But still, even if you're treating it as practice tournaments or whatever, for Mazaalai, they need to... I don't even want to say pull up their pants, because I don't know. When they were winning some stuff a couple of months back, maybe the rest of the other teams weren't at the level they are at right now. Maybe other teams have really improved while they just, got a little lucky with the firepower just clicking at the right day. So yeah, it's pretty damning for them.
Yeah. Oh, well, either way, we'll keep an eye on ESEA Season 34. I mean, again, it's not a major deal. I just wanted to bring up a couple of those results that sort of piqued my interest. Moving on to the chat shit segment, which is, again, our favorite segment where we get to talk whatever we want about. And we've got 2 questions from viewers. One question that I've got to throw in for you guys here before we get into those, though, is obviously you sort of even alluded to this a little bit earlier, Blair, was the LAN and the online sort of situation. And obviously we're seeing a lot of very, very close results right now in the Asia region, and we're sort of deliberating as to who's the top team and what have you. But do you think it would be a bit different had this all been on LAN? Like if we would have seen the minor, and that kind of thing, would we have really been saying that we thought like a team like maybe Invictus, for example, or Beyond or whatever is even remotely close to the top teams?
Yes, I feel LAN would have made a massive difference in Asia. I think the most telling thing is when all of us were over in Extremes LAN. Saw what happened there, right? Teams who had all these crazy online results, they just shat the bed. And then Tyloo and Vici, they showed what they're really made of, especially when it comes to LAN events. And I would have liked to see Tiger in LAN, right? They had that RMR win earlier. I think it would be a real test for them. But I don't want to get into that particular discussion of that frame of mind because we're just not going to be seeing any LANs right now. And I really don't want to fall into the trap of like, oh, if it was LAN, they could have done this. No, it's unfortunate. Everything is online because of one of the biggest pandemics we've seen in recent human history. Adapt and play better. Yes, there'll be ping differences. Yes, there'll be issues and whatnot. So I don't want to bring that up because I feel like it just excuses just play bad Counter-Strike. And unfortunately, some of the losses I've seen or some of the wins I've seen in some of the online games I've had for PAL 2020 for some of the Dreamhack events, it's not coming down to ping or online whatever. It's just bad Counter-Strike overall from some of these teams. So yes, LAN would expose a lot of them. And I feel like some of these, up-and-coming teams who've been plucky and getting these upset wins over some of the better-known ones, I think that just get steamrolled by the likes of a Tyloo or Vici showing up. So yes, LAN, would it make a real difference? Yes, it would. But does it really matter? No, it doesn't. Not with what we have right now.
Okay, then a bit of a different one for you, Pilski. On the same train of thought, though, if once we get past all of this coronavirus, whatever, once lands come back, do you look back at this point in time in history and think like, whatever team was the best at this time, like it doesn't really matter? Also, like, what do you take from this as like a legacy of the corona situation? Is there a legacy, or is it just that was the situation and we had to deal with it, but it doesn't really matter too much, and now we're back to the real Counter-Strike?
Just everyone make the best of a bad situation. If there were lands, like the same teams would be good, in my opinion. Actually, I think Vici would be even better than they are. I think they would be a hell of a lot better because, like, I feel like their individuals are so shaky online, and they would have a lot less of a hard time playing a lot of these teams on LAN. I think they would probably beat a lot more of them quite more convincingly. I think Tiger would probably still be pretty good. I think Tyloo would be very good on LAN. So I think it would be the same teams that are very, very good. And I think the only difference it would make is like you would see a massive change up in the teams that fall below that top 3 sort of situation, top 3/4 situation, where some of them are going to be quite crap on LAN and some of them are going to be quite good on LAN, surprisingly. And
is that a shot at
see.
CS?
Well, maybe. I don't know who. I don't know necessarily who would be like worse on LAN, to be honest, because even you're looking at like you might see Mazaalai be pretty sick on LAN or something like that, and D13, you know, they have a lot of younger players. They might like shit the bed a little bit, so it's quite hard to know, to be honest. As for Invictus, you got some players on Firepower and like Flying's been to an international event. Like they have a little bit of experience there. That's where I think you would see the major shuffle, to be honest, is the teams that fall below the top 3 would be completely different, but the top 3 would still be the top 3, and I think they'd be even further ahead than everybody else than they are now.
Sure, I tend to agree with you as well. I think LAN would make a bit of a difference towards the top end, certainly for a team like Vici, but hey, this is the situation we're in, so Bleh, I think you're right. We have to make the best out of it, and these are the results, so these are the ones that we have to talk about. Anyway, let's move into the viewer questions, and the first one is from Skyboy. For anyone that wants to ask us a question, feel free to drop it in the YouTube comments. We'll get to it in the next episode. So this one's for you, Bleh. He's singled you out. And I did link this to you earlier, so I hope it's not too much of a surprise. Yeah. He says, and it's like 5 fucking questions, but they're all sort of the same questions. So we might have to go through this in tiers. He says, what really happened when the Indian pro player, The Guru, was accused of cheating by his rivals or whatever he was last year? So let's just start with that. Do you know who The Guru was? What happened with this whole cheating scandal, if there was one, and what's going on with this question? Because I have no idea who The Guru is.
All right, so basically there are a couple of 2 or 3 teams consisting of about like a total of like these 14, 15 players who come from a particular part of the country, a region of the country where there've been a lot of rumors, this team's cheating, and they keep accusing each other. There's even an instance where one of the players got beaten up on land by another player, so it's pretty wild scene down there. But considering they haven't achieved anything of note or anything even close to being of note, I just stopped bothering with them because I'm like, listen, I'd rather lose my mind watching Tyloo than deal with this shit with even worse Counter-Strike. So I didn't really worry about, bother with the scene. Was he accused of cheating? Yes, he was. Did anything come out of it? No, he just denied it. And considering these are the guys who play on these local LAN events, or if it's no anti-cheat, whatever. And if the only anti-cheat is going to come out is based on either VAC, like a VAC ban taking place, or based off the admins having their eye tests and looking at demos and seeing, oh, he's tracing the wall, which is not the way you approach this. So it's just a lot of accusations being hurled around. I think they're still out there playing, but they haven't achieved anything, even in a scene as dismally bad as the Indian Counter-Strike scene. They still haven't achieved anything. So I think they're so irrelevant that I just won't be even bothered finding out what the hell happened in the end. I think they're still around. They're still holding accusations and still playing pretty crap CS.
I love how you just like stab yourself there. You're just like, the Indian scene's so bad. You can just see it in your face. You just don't want to say it, but it is. Okay, so he says, what was the full story and what does that say about the Indian CS region? So that's like the second part of the question. Does it say anything to you, or do you not even take this as even a grain of salt?
I think it says a lot about Indian scene. It just goes to show that I don't know where this guy's from. I think he must be an Indian for him to even know about what the fuck happened. I think it was a Facebook post with over 1,000 comments saying, you cheated, no you. No, you cheated, no you. Well, fuck you too. Meet you on the land and beat you up. I'm like, whoa, okay.
Hang on, maybe we should like post this video in the Indian CS:GO groups because I think like we probably get a lot of viewers. You remember that
No.
time the first episode got put in a Thai CS group and it got like 900 more viewers than all of the other ones? That's my
I do
mission for
remember
you,
that.
Blair.
And then you guys were just like, "Oh, Thai CS is so bad," and they never posted again, and then we lost, and no one watches anymore.
We lost like 900 of our viewers.
The thing is, whatever we spoke about, like the Guru and incident, or whatever, it's so obscure and so relevant. I don't think even the Indian CS:GO sub, the Facebook group would even give a shit about that. Like Guru, the fuck that guy. But again, like honestly, I don't think it really makes much of an impact. It's basically two Indian tier 2, tier 3 teams basically holding accusations, haven't achieved much at all. And I don't even know how this brought. Like I'd kind of erased it from my memory until this comment brought it back. So thank you for reminding me of something absolutely pointless.
All right. And this is another part of his question, although it's completely unrelated to the Indian scene. He says,
Thank God.
why did Taiwan never make it in CS? And this is for all of us. It's not just specifically for you, Bleh. So maybe Pilsky, we can start with you because obviously Bleh's been heralding most of these questions.
I remember they had a team that came to Extremes Land. I feel like this is a question for Kang, to be honest, rather than any of us. He would actually probably give you a pretty thoughtful answer. As for me, I remember one or two Taiwanese teams floating around. I do know that Taiwan has some pretty okay players in other games, like in terms of StarCraft, for example. Taiwan actually has a couple of okay players who are like, they could take series off some Europeans or NA players or something like that, and they play. They're in a situation like a proximity that's close to China, I would assume. I don't know how the routing and all that works, but I would assume they could get pretty good practice. So my only assumption is that if they were to have any good players, they would probably end up in Chinese teams. Like you saw Freeman being on a Vici. That's what I would imagine would happen. I wouldn't expect them to have a whole team full of players that's good enough, but I do know that they had one or two or a couple of teams over the years that might have been like a tier 3 team in China or something like that, or maybe like pushing a tier 2 kind of team.
Yeah, I think you have to look at Taiwan as a region being very, very small. So there's not that many players to begin with. And then the level of talent of those players, you might have one or two standouts. I would probably make it a bit more akin to something like maybe Malaysia, Pilsky, where we see like some teams from Malaysia, but they never do anything per se. And then you've got the one or two standout players from that region that inevitably go on to these international rosters. So do you have a dissenting opinion there, Blair, or is it pretty much the same as what we've said?
I think you guys just hit nail on the head. I think there's a similar question that could be asked of why does let's say Brunei not have a good Counter-Strike team, right? Why does Myanmar not have a good Why doesn't India have a good Counter-Strike team? We got 1.3 billion. It's so many questions.
I mean, India had a decent Counter-Strike team.
Yeah, man. Well, let's not talk about that. But the thing with Taiwan is they had a couple of teams. I remember IM Taipei. They had a team called E2 Alive. Yeah, that was the name of the team. EYA. Yeah. Yeah. They qualified because since IMs have a tendency of bigger minors and majors, the big events have a tendency of having a couple of slots available for the host country. That's why they had a slot. But if you look at that team, that was literally the only event I saw them on. I never saw them ever again, even in any online events. And then later on, we see this team Sad Story, I think they're called. Again, nothing special. They haven't really achieved much. And I just feel like it's a combination of the population and other factors and just basic dumb luck that there's no good players coming out there. And I agree with you. If there was like a star player who had the potential to shine, he would easily get picked up by one of the Chinese sides like Freeman was by Vici.
Isn't Marek from Taiwan?
Marek is Hong Kong, I think. I could be wrong. I'm just
pretty sure he's from Taiwan.
Marek is... Oh, yeah, you're right. Marek is from Taiwan. That is correct. And he played for a number of teams. He was playing for eHome for the longest time. So there you go. We have one player.
Yeah, so he's like the Kaze of Taiwan.
Malaysia. Oh, honestly, Malaysia has a few good players. Like apart from Kaze, like before Kaze really broke out, there was Device the new breed, right? But then you have these older guys like the guys from MVP Carnal. You're talking about Alchop, PZ Kid's brother, Executor. Oh, fuck, I forgot his name. Xeva, there we go. Zeva, and then we had Eamon, we had Archop, we had a number of good players until Kevin just broke out. So sorry, Kaze just broke out.
I played on a team with PZ Kid, and he was an interesting chap. He never communicated on his microphone at all, and I said, "Why aren't you coming?" And he goes, "My talk button is H," and I go, "Change it," and he goes, "No," and then he just continued not to com. So that was good. As for Taiwan, just to get back on track a little bit, it's a scene. I remember a funny story of when we were casting Extremes Land, and there was this team. I don't know if the viewer's familiar with, called Ground Zero, and it's still the same player on there. His name's Noobstar, and he literally 1v5 them on Overpass because they all ran at him one by one individually on a gun round, and they got economically reset the next round. So that might have something to do with it. If you're lacking fundamentals and you're getting banked by a tier 2 AWPer from Australia, it's probably not a good state of your scene, to be honest.
Yeah, probably not.
Hey, here's a little tidbit. Just found out that this is a while ago. Marek, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He actually played with in Vici with King Advent and Zoking.
Really?
Back then.
How long ago was that?
2017, and that was when they had Savage in TV as well.
Nice.
That's a long time ago.
He played at IEM Sydney 2017.
The thing is, like this, I remember Marek, and I remember seeing him play. And the thing is, like, he's like just kind of an average player, he's like just a fill-in sort of rifler. So the thing, like, you might have good players from some of these regions that are like decent rifling players or whatever, but if you don't have like a standout star, it doesn't stick in people's minds at all, really.
Yeah,
true.
He didn't play at IEM Sydney 2017.
No. It's not IEM Sydney. This is WSG.
No. Yeah, I know, but I'm just wondering at what point in the timeline was he actually on that roster, or was he just subbing in?
This is way before IEM Sydney.
IEM Sydney was like you're talking about 2017, right?
No. Sorry, my bad. It's actually 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
That was definitely before I was paying a lot of attention to the Chinese scene.
And this was actually when he... Oh, this is an interesting event, though. Like, we had MVP there. I'm talking about Argency, Zine, Sound. We had Atletico. We had... Immunity was still a thing. Like,
Wait,
Bruno, are you okay, James?
Was that the event where Atletico went to and just got absolutely fucking reamed by Benkai?
I think that was the event. Let me see here. Atletico.
This is like the Liaz Atletico?
No, Atletico actually in the group stage they did well. In the playoffs, I think yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
I remember.
You see a picture of Benkai with just like just absolutely inserting himself into his opponents, just plus 40 on the rating.
This is every time I talk about Benkai and I'm like hyping him up, that's the series I'm talking about. Because I just remember watching that and going, what the fuck is happening?
It's such a wild time.
You always remember when an Oceanic team gets reamed at an international event as an Aussie fan, because you're always watching the games. You're like, all right, I'm going to stay up till 4 a.m. to watch this team. And then some Asian dude is just like absolutely destroying you. And you're like, what's going on? Yeah. I stayed up for this.
Especially back then.
Wait, hold on. I could be wrong. Actually, Atletico got reamed by Fire Dragoon.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
I'm very confused now. That's the MVP Cardinal lineup. Like, I think Kaze was on that. I'm curious now. I'm going to probably Google this shit. Anyway.
All right. Well, while you do that, we can move into the next question. That one's given us a lot of conversation. So thank you, Skyboy. And we move into this question here from Aaron Merchant, who says, great video. Loving this series. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. And his question is, will Chelleos and or his team break through into the top 4? What's the possibility of him getting picked up, or do you reckon he's received offers but decided to stay in his comfort zone and game with his homies? Just generally interested in your opinion, as he was a man shrouded in mystery till his big debut in 2018 on LAN, which would have been the AEM LAN from memory. I like how he's phrased that question as well. It's like the way that I phrase questions. It's like, I've got this question, but I also want to give you the context and sort of set you up for something. So it's a good question from Aaron Merchant. Obviously, you might not have too much to add here, Blair, but we'll go with Pilsky first. And if you've got something, then you can let me know. So what do you reckon, Pilsky?
I would probably throw Blair in on this for a small opinion first, because I'm going to rant. Blair's not going to get a word in for like 15 minutes.
Well, Blair, you've had your 30 seconds to talk then. I'll give you a little bit more by waffling on here. I'll give you the first part of the question. Will Chelleos or his team break into the top 4?
I think the thing with Chelleos is like, I remember he had that little bit of like the air mystery coming in, right? He's shitting on everyone, and then he comes on land, performs, and everything. Honestly, looking at the state of Australian OCS right now, I don't think it's gonna be easy. Is it doable? Yeah, anything's possible, right? But at least based on what I see with the, you're talking about Order, you're talking about Bond, you're talking about obviously Renegades as well. It's gonna be a hard battle. So I think the easy answer for me is no, not right now. And if you see any upward trajectory from him and his boys over the next couple of months and is starting to really compete against the top 4 teams and have some pretty good results, then yeah, then I might change my answer. But right now, the simple answer for me is no.
Okay, I'll give you my opinion then, Pilsky, very quickly. And I think you could actually make the argument that Rooster is a top 4 team right now, and there would be an argument to be made, right? I think you could probably say like Chiefs or Truckers or whatever and put those teams in that mix. But I think there's a very real argument that he already is in the top 4.
I would agree with that. I think there's a couple of it's another question where there's a couple of questions in there. Chelleos is someone who has caused me a lot of frustration in the past. I've played him so many times, and he's gone literally like 100 bombed in a best of 3. Almost every best of 3 I've ever played against him. He's shit on me more times than I can count. And he's someone that it feels impossible to play against when he's on. I think now is a good time to be a Chelleos fan, to be honest, because the Rooster team looks more well-rounded than it ever has before and actually has a pretty good depth of talent, and they're playing proper CS. So I think that there is a really good chance that if before Chiefs sort of gets their shit together, they could probably be the 4th best team in Australia, right behind the other couple of boys with Avant, Order, and Renegades. And if they play really well, and you see this like ASAP and Netic play up to the level that we know that they can then play at, and then you've got this Danny G guy who pops off from time to time, and then Chelleos plays good. You've got a pretty good like core of players who are quite good online at least, and that's all they'll have to play for the time being. So I think they're quite a good team. They're underrated, and I think they have a bit of an underrated map pool at the moment. It's just a question of whether they'll keep improving and how consistent that they can be going forward. As for Chelleos joining another team, I'm someone that isn't very involved with like what the players say, and I've myself have already heard that he's had offers for better teams, and I barely talk to anybody, and I barely like listen to the gossip or anything like that. I'm not sure why he wouldn't have taken those or why that hasn't happened, but I do know that like, you know, he's even played series against some of the best teams in Australia when he's on MLW and stuff, and had like fucking massive series. And when you're getting banged by someone like that, he raises eyebrows. That's how people like Valiant's got picked up, and that's how it always happens. You're playing for a lesser team, and you have a big performance against a good team. You'll get yourself picked up. So
when was that though? By the way, is that like back in 2019 or is that in 2020 that you've heard?
Who are you talking about, Chelleos?
Yeah. Because there's a difference between 2019 Chelleos and 2020
I would
Chelleos.
legit say 2018 and 2019, he was quite good. And in 2017, he was fisting me. So I've had a good 3 years of playing against Chelleos and then watching Chelleos play really good against other people, to where I think I know he's a fucking good player for sure. It's just a question of why he hasn't joined on a better team, or why he hasn't had an opportunity to play more lands and things like that. I don't know much about the guy.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually heard the same as well, that he has had offers, some interesting offers as well. So I don't want to like dive into that or anything like that, give away potentially something that might still end up happening, for example. So suffice to say, I think he's a player that can go further than where he is right now. Like, not that Roosters is a bad team and even arguably is a top 4 team, but I almost feel like Roosters in that position because the top 4 at the moment was a little bit unstable with the way that Chiefs have been looking. Had that genuine Chiefs roster still kind of been persisting, would they be better than Rooster? Maybe not, arguably, based on the way that they were trending. So, look, I don't know. I guess that's a difficult question to answer. I think the takeaway for me is that will his team make top 4? I would argue they probably already have. What's the possibility of being picked up? I think very high if he wants to get picked up. But for some reason, he is just, as you say, for yourself, but he's also for us quite a player that's quite shrouded in mystery. So guess we'll have to wait and see how things go for Chelleos.
Yeah, and I think as well, like I don't see like Sponge tweeting that much about Aussie Counter-Strike, but he's literally tweeted on his Twitter and gone like, pick Chelleos up. He's fucking sick.
That was a while ago though.
It was a while ago, but still, like, you know, if you're raising eyebrows of like people who, you know what they're talking about, know their shit, then yeah, it's probably a pretty good go.
Probably is, but tell you what, guys, it's been a pretty good go for Geographically Challenge number 12, and we are at the end of it. So it's been a bit of a longer episode than we anticipated it to be, and actually a longer episode than the last couple, which is kind of nice because we did take a week off. So hope you guys missed us, and I know a few people did. Some people were tweeting at me and sending me messages and stuff. So that's a feel-good moment. Thank you for that. Otherwise, that's the end of the episode. So let's get your final thoughts on the last couple of weeks. Blair, how you feeling, and what you'd like to say before we go.
Yeah, I just hope I don't lose my mind but by the time we reach the next episode, I still have that 1 week remaining of PAL 2020 and then the playoffs. I'm hoping that the playoffs will at least be
playoffs should
good.
Be
good CS. It should be good CS, right? But at least I hope the final week doesn't break me. I do worry for my mental health and well-being, which is why I have a new bottle of whiskey. But yeah, that's about it. I'm glad to be finally back. I love ranting. I feel like I was feeling very uncomfortable the past couple of weeks. I'm like, why is that? And I realized I really haven't gone for a rant. And this episode is kind of like a therapy session.
You got to be too PC on the broadcast.
Yeah, I can't, right? I can't be the Tyloo. What the fuck are you doing? You fucking idiots. I can't say that. I got to be Tyloo. That you could have played that better, right? It's so different at a broadcast and us just talking shit. But yeah, hire us, you cunts.
Okay, cool. And one more question before we give this to Pilsky. What was the type of whiskey that you got? What was the bottle?
Macallan, 12.
There you go. We've influenced him. Okay, Pilsky. I heard you were drinking some whiskey earlier today as well. So what were you drinking?
I have to be honest. I went to Dan Murphy's. For anyone that doesn't know what that is, that's like a value store for alcohol here in Australia. You get some pretty good deals there. I bought a liter of Canadian Club, a little bit trashy, but it goes down nice with some ginger ale. So, what can you even say? It was like $50 for a liter of whiskey, and I'm pretty happy with my purchase.
And any final thoughts?
I would really like to cast some more Counter-Strike. I don't think I'm going to be casting any Counter-Strike for like a month, so I would like to be hired, but if people don't hire me, then I'm just going to keep playing Valorant.
Well, you can blame the players for that, Pilsky, because of the player break here in ANZ. Otherwise, we would have had ANZ champs next week, but that's a whole different discussion that we're maybe not knowledgeable enough to dive into. Either way, that is the end of Geographically Challenged number 12. My choice of whiskey is Macallan 12 as well. I'd like you to give me a like and a subscribe and a comment and all that stuff. And remember, there's a Patreon if you're interested in that as well. Although I dare say there's not too many of you that have even made it this far into the episode. Either way, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.